In the 1950s, Ireland was poor, painfully poor. The newly independent republic was struggling to stand on its own feet. Wages were barely 30 to 40% of what people earned in the UK. Farms dominated the landscape, industry was limited, and opportunities were few. Families emigrated by the thousands in search of better lives. But here's the plot twist. Within just a few decades, that same Ireland would rise so fast that by the late 1990s, it overtook the United Kingdom in GDP per capita. And after 2015, things went even crazier. On paper, Ireland became the second richest economy on Earth. Sounds unbelievable, right? Well, buckle up, because this is one of the most fascinating and misunderstood economic stories in modern history. If you're serious about understanding how countries transform, how nations rise from poverty to prosperity, watch this video all the way to the end. Because Ireland's story isn't just about money, it's about strategy, timing, and how small countries can outsmart giants. The GDP illusion. Let's start with the big question. If Ireland looks so rich, why don't the Irish feel rich? When Apple says, designed in California, made in China, there's a hidden third part of that sentence nobody talks about. Profits booked in Ireland. That's right. For accounting purposes, Apple and other multinational giants, Google, Microsoft, Meta, record a huge portion of their profits in Ireland. Why? Taxes. While U.S. corporate tax used to be around 33%, Ireland offered a stunning 3%. Even the EU discovered that some companies effectively paid as little as 1%. And here's the crazy part. When the EU demanded Apple pay Ireland 13 billion euros in back taxes, the Irish government didn't even want it. Why? Because accepting it could damage the system that had been feeding their economy for years. To make sense of the numbers, Ireland created a new measure, modified GNI, a more realistic snapshot of its economy. In 2023, Ireland's GDP per capita stood near 100,000 euros, but the modified GNI showed a much more grounded 54,000 euros, still higher than the UK, but less of a miracle and more of a calculated success. From farms to fortune, the transformation. Ireland's success story didn't start with Silicon Valley. It began in the fields. In the decades after World War II, Ireland consolidated its agriculture, butter, beef, Guinness, building strong export brands. Then in 1973, both the UK and Ireland joined the European Economic Community, what we now call the EU. But here's the twist. Ireland benefited more. It received huge agricultural subsidies and regional aid, helping the nation modernize. Meanwhile, the UK lost free trade with its old Commonwealth partners. Slowly, the tables began to turn. The 1990s boom. The Celtic tiger awakens. By the 1990s, Ireland had quietly built one of the most attractive business environments on Earth. Lowest corporate tax in the developed world. A young, educated, English-speaking workforce. Close cultural ties to the US. It was the perfect cocktail for American tech companies looking for a European base. And the Irish government made sure they came, offering land, grants, and a warm welcome. Around Dublin, vast areas were developed specifically for these firms. The result? An explosion in investment, jobs, and wages. Economic growth soared to over 6% a year during the 1990s. Confidence skyrocketed. People were buying homes, cars, and dreaming bigger than ever. But as every boom has its shadow, so did Ireland's. The crash of 2008, when the tiger fell. The Celtic tiger roared too loudly, a massive property bubble grew. Houses were built faster than anywhere in Europe, and banks poured money into construction. Then, 2008 hit. When the global financial crisis struck, Ireland's bubble burst hard. House prices collapsed 50%, unemployment spiked, and the economy shrank by 10%. The once unstoppable tiger was suddenly a trembling mouse. Debt soared. The government was forced to accept a bailout from the IMF and EU. For 5 painful years, Ireland clawed its way back. Slower, smaller, humbler. The comeback, refusing to fold. During the bailout negotiations, the IMF told Ireland to raise its corporate tax rate. Ireland refused. That one decision changed everything. By keeping taxes ultra-low, Ireland doubled down on its biggest advantage, being the global home for American profits. When Apple, Google, and others shifted their accounting to Dublin after 2015, GDP exploded again. Even though much of that money was on paper, real tax revenues surged. Corporate income tax tripled to 22 billion euros, with 80% of it coming from U.S. companies. The Irish government suddenly found itself with a budget surplus. An embarrassment of riches. Compare that to the UK, where after years of austerity and weak growth, public finances were in tatters. While Britain was cutting budgets, Ireland was wondering how to spend its overflow. The housing trap. But prosperity came with pain. In Dublin today, rent can hit 2,000 euros a month, while a teacher's starting salary barely covers that. After the 2008 crash, many construction firms shut down. Buildings slowed to a crawl, but Ireland's population didn't. With immigration rising fast, the housing supply couldn't keep up. Now a country with record tax surpluses faces a crisis of its own making, a shortage of homes. Over 75,000 people are estimated to live in homelessness or housing exclusion. For many, the so-called economic miracle feels like an illusion when they can't afford a roof over their head. Why the miracle may not last, even Ireland's government knows the golden age might be temporary. A global push for a minimum corporate tax rate threatens the very foundation of its boom. The OECD predicts this could shift billions away from tax havens, including Ireland. And while the profits may be accounting magic, the jobs they've brought are very real. U.S. firms now employ a quarter of Ireland's private sector, with average salaries around 85,000 euros. That wealth fuels inequality, but Ireland's progressive tax system balances it out, making it one of Europe's most equal countries after taxes and benefits. Meanwhile, across the Irish Sea, the UK has struggled. Investment has fallen. Pension funds send money abroad. Brexit hit confidence. Since 2007, per capita growth has been near zero. It's left Britain in what economists call a doom loop. Low growth, low investment, low wages. Two islands, two realities today. Ireland's GDP numbers shine brighter, but high living costs have dimmed that glow for many families. And yet, the transformation remains incredible. In just 70 years, Ireland went from one of Europe's poorest nations to a global tech powerhouse, a small island that learned how to play the big game. Not through luck, but through deliberate strategy. The UK and Ireland now face similar struggles: rising housing costs, stagnant real wages, and the urgent need for affordable living. But Ireland's rise still stands as one of the greatest economic reinventions in modern history. Final thoughts. The Irish story teaches a lesson every country and every individual can learn from. Sometimes it's not about having more power. It's about being smarter with the little power you have. Ireland used its size to its advantage, flexible, adaptable, and strategic. But like every success story, it faces a new question. Can the miracle last? If you've watched this far, you're not just curious. You're serious about understanding change. So don't stop here. Watch the next video, where we dive deep into how the UK once solved its housing crisis only to break it again, and what Ireland can learn from it, because history doesn't just repeat itself, it rhymes.